Leaning back into the plush cushion of the yesteryears, we sneak into the mid-20th century, a period when loud neons and rose-tinted glasses of optimism scarcely mask the undercurrents of societal rigidity, blue laws, and secret lives. Let's turn the dial of our time machine, not to the flashy speakeasies or the smoke-filled jazz clubs, but into a quieter corner, nestled within the hidden crevices of the 1950s. Visit, if you will, a charming parlor of an old brick apartment. Here, in the soft embrace of a velveteen armchair, with the air fragrant with the aroma of freshly brewed Assam tea, we shall begin our tale. The 1950s have often been described as the decade of brewing rebellion. The silent clamor for change was growing, but what of those whose voices could hardly rise above whispers, whose lives were considered not pink, but lavender, a term coined during this period itself? We're talking about the charming, secretive, and wholly ingenious world of gay men in the 1950s. The era before rainbows and pride parades shimmered in the sunlight, when subtlety was the name of the game, and every word exchanged held its secret. You see, as delightful as it would have been, times were such that our protagonists here just couldn't swing open the doors flaunting sequined suits, though what a magnificent sight that would have been. Enter the world of coded language, addressed by historians as Polari. This secret dialect allowed men to recognize each other and even flirt without raising the alarm bells of homophobia. The coded lingo included words like butch, kiki, and basket, all normal day-to-day words, but strung together in a particular context. They painted images of hidden identities and clandestine meets. Quite the titillating charade of words, wouldn't you agree? However, coded language wasn't the only thing colorfully veiled in this era. Our gentlemen from the 1950s discovered ways of communicating that draw parallels with many wildlife species, methods of signaling. Handkerchiefs, color coding, and even the way one wore apparel were all part of the delicate dance of intrigue known as flagging. Who knew that a flamboyantly brandished scarf wasn't just a fashion choice, but a statement whispered through the folds of cloth? And let's not forget the iconic ring, worn on the little finger, once the signal of higher education. Much before the role of pinky rings was dictated by mob movies, it held a secret symbol of being part of a community. The 1950s weren't just the era of secrecy and porridge, my dear listener. They marked the silhouettes of quiet rebellion, flipping a firm thumb to societal constraints and paving the way for a future awash with brighter colors. It's a snoozy yet stirring mix of unexpected unity and hushed hopes, crafting a story worth nodding off to. As we stir steaming mugs of milky happiness and listen to the mellow strains of Billie Holiday's blues, I find myself wondering, where will the echoes of the 1950s carry us in our slumber-filled exploration next? A nip of curiosity will blend well with our steeping story, don't you think? Now, if my telling of this yarn, teetering between the fascinatingly historic and dreamily soporific, has been a cozy quilt around your slumbering senses, do subscribe to the channel. It would tickle me pink to know I've stirred an interest in you. And before you surrender deeper into the arms of Morpheus, would you humor this soothing voice? I'd love to hear where you are nestled, listening to our tale of hidden heralds and what time it is in your corner of the world. Rest assured, your journey to dreamland will be peppered with more such tales, simmering warm and inviting on the stove of history. May you wake up to a well-brewed chapter of our lesser-known past. But for now, dream well. Underneath the brave, conformable facade worn by many in the 1950s, a revolution was silently brewing. Well, it wasn't exactly brewing tea, more like brewing secret codes, unless you find codes that pave the way for liberation, quite like a steaming cup of Earl Grey perhaps. The polite, parsimonious son of the 1950s obscured an undercurrent of riveting subversion, a secret world where gay men orchestrated a rather Sinatra-esque "fly me to the moon" escape from the suppressive, earthbound norms of the era. Now, picture how using a secret code might feel. You approach a stranger in the supermarket. Your heart beats like mad. You're scared they may not understand or, worse, react negatively. Nevertheless, you dive, ask, "Do you have a green carnation?" Hold that image for a moment. It becomes funnier later. If the stranger narrows his eyes, squints, or, heaven forbid, quickly steps away from the cucumber stand to call security, then you know you're barking up the wrong tree. But if, instead, he smiles and says, "I do. Can I borrow your cigarette? A matchstick?" You might well have struck gold. Well, not gold exactly, but certainly something rainbow-hued. Yes, you guessed it, the language of secret codes. I mean, we all use them, even today. For example, if someone offers you coffee at a party and you answer, "No thanks, I'm driving tonight," that, dear listener, might just be the 21st century version of the green carnation. Gay men in the 1950s needed a special twist of the secret code lingo, a subtle, discreet way to communicate, to reach out, a linguistic wink, if you will, to establish their presence and find each other amidst the population. Now, let's return to the supermarket scene in question. The green carnation borrowed and the insinuation of chucking out the matchstick truly paints a different picture, doesn't it? The two individuals in this narrative have just declared their affiliation, not just to a mutually preferred color palette, but to a community, an identity veiled from the outside world. It's indeed amusing that to find a fellow gay man in the 1950s, you needed to be part amateur, botanist and part prolific poet. Flower shop keepers must have been quite perplexed with the rise in green carnation sales, I'd wager. A more popular code used extensively in personal ads and publications was "Friend of Dorothy." Who was this Dorothy, you're probably thinking? Well, technically, the line originated as a reference to the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy is kind, accepting, and full of heart. Thus, any friend of Dorothy's must be a stand-up, accepting person, eh? Some theories also point out that Dorothy could very well have been Dorothy Parker, a writer known for her witty repartee, more than adequate alcohol consumption, and unplanned, numerous gay pals. Part humorous, part clever, these codes played an essential role in the formation and longevity of the gay community during this period in history. While it gave gay men a sense of identification and community, it also served as an imperative survival mechanism, the thin line between societal acceptance and ostracization. As our faded sepia memories take a stroll down 1950s America, we truly appreciate the humor behind these codes. At the same time, we understand their vitality. They were more than just whispers circulating in the back room of a hush-hush speakeasy. They were the initial sparks to what soon became a full-blown, vibrant, equally noisy riot for LGBT rights. As we transition from the climb of these coded expressions, we shall journey next into a world where printed words made a difference, a place where gay men's voices echoed across open pages, where the medium of newspapers and magazines danced backstage to the gay rights movement. Essentially, the world of queer media before the dawn of Twitter emojis. I promise to keep my tone as dramatic as this sounds. It's a promise as solid as the codes we discussed. Life in 1950s. America was a bit like living inside a postcard. Sitcoms, housewives with perfect hair, dads in hats with ubiquitous pipes, and Luna-like cheese in a can. Everything, so outwardly orderly and composed. But like the iceberg that sank the Titanic, oh, what a world lived beneath the surface. In this prim and propertied panorama, there existed pockets of people looking for life beyond blueberry pies and baseball. One of these pockets of people were the gay men of the time, who had developed their own intricate, almost James Bond-level system of undercover contact. And no, it wasn't wearing pink scarves on Tuesdays, nor was it singing show tunes in a deep voice. It was subtle, profoundly thoughtful, mostly invisible, and like a really good detective novel, best enjoyed with a cup of cocoa before bed. Let's dive inclusively into these historical quirks, which now seem like they could easily inspire a season of Mad Men. Picture a bustling cafe with stylish, shiny coffee cups and the jangling merriment of a jukebox spilling out hits from the likes of Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. A seemingly average man walks in, your classic Joe. He orders his coffee, black, and casually places his left hand, fingers pressed together, on the bar. A seemingly ordinary gesture, blending into the cacophony of coffee clinks and sporadic laughter. But this, dear sleep-bound listeners, was as loud as a flare gun. It was the 1950s gay man's Morse code equivalent of safe to talk. Another fascinating piece of the puzzle was the specific vocabulary that gay men used to identify and find potential companionship. Words such as friend of Dorothy, referring to Judy Garland's iconic character Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, became a covert signal. It was a sort of a password, slipped smoothly into an everyday conversation, as smooth as that lavender-scented moisturizing hand cream you just applied, ideally. Next time you watch that beloved film, keep this charming little fact in mind. It might just add another dimension to the enchantment. In a world before mobile apps, Facebook, or even fluffy chat rooms, this secret language and coded behavior were as essential as the tobacco in one's pipe or the hairspray in one's beehive hairdo. Yes, the clandestine had its own charm, and for these men, it added a layer of intrigue to their lives that might have been unimaginable for their straight counterparts, sipping their gin and tonics obliviously. Now, imagine a world where the wink of an eye, the angle of a hat, or the color of a handkerchief hanging from your back pocket could be a beacon, a call to arms, a lighthouse amidst the stormy seas of societal judgment, or worse, utter isolation. But in every season of darkness, there are always slivers of light. These gentlemen, bound by strict societal rules and trembling under the weight of homophobia, found ingenious ways to connect, to breathe, and most importantly, to love. Through our contemporary lens, it might seem stuffy, secretive, even dangerous, but for the brave gay men living in the prune gardens and white picket fences of the 1950s, it was a lifeline. It was no parade with its lavish rainbows and fabulous glitter showers, but it was a dance, a clandestine waltz, performed with a deftness that comes with the necessity of survival. As you start to drift slowly into slumber, let's quietly turn the page and tiptoe into the next chapter. A world of policing passion, where our vigilante Valentinos were suddenly on the wrong side of the law. Prepare for an intriguing toss and turn in our floating journey through yesteryear's untold stories. Dream good dreams, my drowsy devotees, of secret hand gestures and whispers encrypted with love. More clandestine codes, cheeky winks, and sleep-soothing tales are ambling your way. As we continue to delve into the clandestine world of the 1950s, we find ourselves in the subtlety entrancing realm of language, where words contain hidden meanings and code words within them hold hidden worlds. Back when the thought of pride parades was as fanciful as moon landings, camouflaged communication was not just a means to establish relationships, but an imperative survival tactic in the face of an unaccepting society. Now you may think of codes and imagine Da Vinci's encrypted messages or enigmatic ciphers of wartime spies, but their 1950s counterparts were a tad more mundane, let's say. The handkerchief code, you see, was one such secret society handshake. A simple, color-coded system of handkerchiefs was used by gay men to discreetly signal their interests or preferences. A green handkerchief might point towards a penchant for hustling, while red suggested a liking for fisting. So, if your 1950s time-traveling alter ego ever finds himself puzzled about the remarkable interest shown by men of the past to the nuances of his pocket square, well, this might just explain the curiosity. Or perhaps it was just a really fancy handkerchief. It must be mentioned, though, that codes were not always this symbolic or poetic. Sometimes they were surprisingly literal. For instance, gay in the 1950s, contrary to its original meaning of happy and carefree, was used quite literally to signify one's sexual orientation. But how this transition from joyous frolicking to clandestine signaling happened is a story as mysterious as it's humorous. Imagine someone, in an overzealous pursuit of happiness, using the term to define their lifestyle, and before they knew it, all of their friends had started doing the same, carrying the torch onward into the labyrinths of 1950s secrecy. As you lay there, floating on the brink of dreams and wakefulness, wouldn't you find it amusing to ponder over such inadvertent creations of secret codes? Then there were Polari, a unique form of communication used primarily by gay men in London during the 1950s and 1960s. Derived from a mishmash of languages including Italian, Romani, Yiddish, and sailor slang, it almost sounds like something out of a boisterously flamboyant pirate movie. As you cozy up under the covers, consider the words naff, drab or heterosexual, or vada the bona cartes, check out the good-looking guy, which were part of the Polari lingo, quite charmingly clandestine, wouldn't you agree? And who could forget the all-time classic, the ever-present in cinematic cliches, the friend of Dorothy? Now, you're probably thinking, who's Dorothy and why does she have so many friends? Well, the term stemmed from the classic film The Wizard of Oz, wherein Judy Garland's character, Dorothy, was adored by the gay community for her trouble-filled journey towards acceptance and happiness, resonating deeply with their own experiences. Her name then fostered a thoughtfully coded question: are you a friend of Dorothy? Which wouldn't raise any suspicions to those unfamiliar with its meaning, but would mark a safe harbor to those aware. Drifting through these snippets of hidden love and desires of the past, one can't help but smile at the clandestine ingenuity of human spirit and the lengths it would go to create an inclusive space, even in the hushed whispers of secret codes. A delightful duet of danger and desire, don't you think? As we gently leave behind this indulgence in coded conversations, the noticeable evidence of a movement starts to coalesce on the horizon. Hints of courageous individuals and organizations willing to step outside the shadows and demand a more accepting society begin to emerge. Gently wrapped in the soft exhale of history's shift, we'll embark on the path of rebel hearts in the next chapter. A quiet revolution is just beginning to stir, my dear sleep wanderers. So, sleep tight as we prepare our time machines for a more audacious ride in the hidden alleys of history. If you picture the 1950s, you might think of sleek cars, modest diners, and rock and roll dancing its way into the hearts of teenagers. But keep in mind, this was also a world of coded identities, underground networks, and a time when holding someone's hand could result in rampant suspicion, which was the case for gay men routinely living under the radar and aiming to connect with each other. In case you're wondering, yes, the art of subtly has a vibrant history of its own, and it was flourishing in the 1950s. Now, imagine you were a gay man in the 50s trying to safely navigate a society that didn't understand, or worse, even criminalized your very existence. How would you find someone like you? Maybe you'd drop a hint using some of the era's slang. Listen closely now. We're about to turn time back and decode some 1950s queer slang. Like a linguistic archaeologist, maybe you'll even find an old treasure. Remember to keep a straight face, or should I say, a gay face, as we unearth the past. Back then, a man looking to find someone of the same persuasion could ask if they were a friend of Dorothy. Now, you might wonder who this Dorothy is. Was she a particularly popular matchmaker or a recognized LGBTQ+ figure of the times? Not quite. It's believed to be a reference to Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, a characterization of being lost, searching for a sense of belonging, and dreaming of a place somewhere over the rainbow. Not the most obvious hint, but with the right context, it had a deep resonance with many gay men of that era. Another term that emerged was gay cat, and if your mind immediately leapt to felines partaking in a pride parade, your imagination is splendidly vibrant. But dial it down slightly. Gay cat spoke of a younger or less experienced man taken under the wing of an older, more seasoned individual, And just like that, the 50s had their tastefully coded version of mentorship, or what we today casually refer to as a sugar daddy arrangement. Let's say you wanted to affirm that a place, say a bar or a restaurant, was safe. You'd label it as piano. Does this mean every man striding home with piano music sheets was seeking a secret meeting? Well, we'll leave that piano key untuned for now. While these codes feel humorous, even quaint, they were rooted in a time when the stakes were unfathomably high. These were not just pieces of vintage slang, but survival tools, a lifeline for men sailing in a world of strict norms and dangerous seas. Fun fact, amidst all this coded cloud of secrecy, a rather strapping semiology emerged. It was the color-coded handkerchief system, or, as hipsters of today might say, the hanky code. A charmingly bold display of coded identity, these handkerchiefs ranged from light blue for oral sex to red for fisting. Both left and right pocket mattered, symbolizing seeking or giving, but we'll politely keep the further color spectrum and its implications into the drawers of history. While delving into this coded language, remember to tuck away a gentle chuckle for the beauty of human resilience it represents. Our ancestors navigated this labyrinth, armed with technicolor handkerchiefs, chirping "Friend of Dorothy" to fellow navigators, all in the quest for love, companionship, and treading beyond the realm of the conceivable. This was their legacy, the foundations of a battle still being fought today, but with a visibly stronger, more colorful army. History, my dear listener, is so much more than just dates and battles. It is full of secret messages floated across bar counters, whispered in alleyways, and painted on ties and handkerchiefs. Remember, next time you hear a phrase that seems as random as a tea kettle singing in Morse code, it might just be a coded wink from history. Dorothy, it seems, had quite an array of friends. Now, as we pull back the heavy curtain of time, let's inch a little closer to the spotlight as we prepare to delve deeper into the world of secret identities and masquerades, as we explore the Diogenes Club and the Polari language lurking beneath the surface of everyday conversation in the next chapter. Remember, my dear friend, every word is a doorway into a secret world. Let's step into the next. In the secret world of 1950s gay America, cryptography was not just a side interest, it was crucial for survival. It's especially delightful to think of it not as spy work, because let's be honest, that's way too intense for our cozy history exploration, but rather as a quirky James Bond-style pursuit undertaken in pastel-colored mid-century kitchens while making pineapple upside-down cake. Let's take a moment and slip through the crack in time and envision these men, these fantastically brave men, amid streamlined furniture and larger than necessary cocktail measures. The air thick with the smell of fresh baked bread, and beneath it, secrets. They were living a dual life with one foot in the glossy veneer of heteronormativity, and the other, clad in a tasteful loafer, firmly in clandestinity. A surprising number of these secret codes that gay men used were hidden in plain sight, comfortably nestled in day-to-day speech. A marriage of words designed to sound innocuous to the uninitiated, yet carry a potent message to those in the know. Take, for example, the phrase, "Friend of Dorothy." You, my wonderfully curious listener, might wonder who this mystical Dorothy is and why seemingly everyone was her friend. Well, the phrase has been lovingly, and with a good measure of laughter, traced back to the classic The Wizard of Oz and its rainbow-resplendent rendition of a colorfully otherworldly realm, a place beyond Kansas where different is celebrated, not shunned. The wonderfully flamboyant character of Dorothy, adored by Judy Garland, served as an unwitting gay icon, confirming her status as a perennial sleepover favorite film even today. And while this phrase might seem like a playful nod to an innocent movie, remember that at the time, this coded language was pivotal for gay men to signal their identity to each other. More hilariously covert, codes were also whispered through the grapevine in those years, quirky wink and nod phrases designed to protect and unite a community persistently living under the radar. likes and dislikes suddenly took on a whole new level of secret significance. Saying he likes his coffee black wasn't a simple coffee order in a neighborly chat, but a veiled admission of one's sexual preference. Oh, and we can't forget the deliciously mischievous "he's musical," which had nothing to do with one's talent on the piano, but was an understated way to confirm someone swung the other way. Now, this might make you think twice the next time you give someone compliments for their music taste. In the background of all this sprightly coding, there were also more serious and tangible codes being used during those years, a forebear to the hanky codes that flourished in the 1970s. Some men used color-coded accessories, discrete buttons, or even strategic nuances in their personal grooming as silent signals to others within the community. What's intriguing is that these coded languages evolved organically for a starkly poignant purpose, played out against the backdrop of a post-war American society that was far from ready to accept diversity in sexual orientation. While we might chuckle at these charming and clever hidden languages, they're also a bold reminder of a time when love and compassion fought bravely against repression and intolerance. And in weaving this tale of hidden symbols, we have a pause here, a break in the delicately coded tapestry. In our next slice of the narrative, we'll delve into the lampshade collectors community. Just picture men in snappy sweaters, engrossed in scanning high street lamps. Only this eclectic hobby had little to do with the appreciation for good lighting, and everything to do with illuminating a path to acceptance and solidarity. In the carefully curated closets of the 1950s, accessorizing was an art form, one often utilized by gay men to subtly signify their true identities without attracting unwarranted attention. You could say it was a fashion statement of a different kind, not meant for the Vogue magazines, but rather for those who were searching for companionship in a world that insisted they didn't exist. The classic handkerchief code, or hanky code, as it was affectionately called within the community, is a well-known example of secret communication among gay men during this time. It's been often mythologized for its complexity, but ironically, its essence lay in its simplicity. The idea was that a man could flaunt a colored handkerchief in his back trouser pocket, with the color and side of the pocket indicating specific personal preferences that would have otherwise gone unexpressed in the buttoned-up society of the day. Sounds like a well-coordinated, sartorial semaphore system. But did you know that even the knot placement on a necktie had the potential to be an in-fashion indicator of one's sexual orientation? Indeed, this trend was particularly noticeable in places such as offices or formal gatherings where the handkerchief code might be deemed as, how shall we put it, a touch too frivolous. But of course, it wasn't without its limitations. Given that neckties were worn by most men during that era, there was a high probability of accidental signaling leading to misunderstood intentions. One can only imagine the awkwardness that might have ensued. No, Robert, I've not been trying to subtly hit on you at our monthly board meetings. I just suck at tying Windsor knots. Another example of clandestine signaling used by gay men of the 1950s was the intimate act of sharing violets. Violets, I hear you ask, bemused and slightly intrigued. Yes, dear listener, violets, the flower. This peculiar ritual had its origins in the poetry of ancient Greece. You know, the same folks who gave us democracy and Olympic Games and problems in geometry that still haunt many high schoolers till this day. The renowned ancient Greek poet, Sappho, whose romantic and erotic verses were usually addressed to women, had penned one such dedicatory verse to her female lover with the lines, close-cropped, you wear a garland/well and sweetly around your soft neck /made of woven flowers / and strung together with violets. Alas, literary nuances such as this, recognized by gay men in the 20th century, were primarily their unique shared secret, a sort of inside joke lost on the majority of society. How poetic, don't you think, dear listener, that in such repressive times, a simple bloom was a secret symbol of a love that dared not speak its name? Almost gives you a fresh perspective on Valentine's Day bouquets, doesn't it? But while we're immersed in the clandestine codes of the 50s, let's not forget the coded language, Polari. Borrowing from Italian, Romany, and Cant, among others, Polari was once a vibrant underground slang within Britain's gay community during the rigid post-war era. Intriguingly, even the BBC unknowingly played its part in Polari's popularization due to the sly use of the language in a radio comedy show, Round the Horn. Audiences were left in splits, oblivious to the actual elephant in the room, or in this case, the radio box. Language and apparel, two primary facets of human expression, were cleverly manipulated to serve as camouflage billboards, announcing gay identities discreetly, inventively. It's fascinating, even heartwarming in a way, to see how the human spirit finds ways to express itself, even in the most restrictive circumstances. As we wander deeper into the fascinating labyrinth of the past, navigating between hushed whispers and colorful handkerchiefs, we're going to uncover more hidden tales of courage and resilience. From coded language to dances, the gay community has always found a way to carve out their unique narrative amidst societies that often chose not to listen. Now, if you think violets and handkerchiefs were intriguing, wait till you hear about the clandestine world of music and gay bars in the 50s. But let's save that dance for another sleepy adventure, shall we? As they say, the night is young, and there's time for another song. Drift away while the records spin on, and we'll pick up the tune again when you're ready to dance through history once more. As we've seen, our 1950s comrades had to get creative in their communication. Just as young romantics etched amorous messages into tree trunks, these gentlemen had to find a way to express themselves in an environment that wasn't exactly the embodiment of acceptance. You may be familiar with Shakespeare's famous line, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Well, for our gentlemen, a flower wasn't merely a flower. It encoded an entirely different meaning. Welcome to the world of floral arrangements. Now, I do mean this quite literally. Our swift-footed 50s friends had a code buried in buds and blooms, mostly roses. And no, I'm not yanking your chain here. Expressing interest in horticulture could have been a subtle indicator. Rather than conveying sweet nothings through sonnets, these clever chaps used the language of flowers, or floriography. Floriography was a Victorian-era trend where each particular bud and bloom was associated with a specific sentiment. In this time and context, however, their petaled lexicon had taken on a nuanced twist. A red rose, classically the symbol of passionate love, signified an active gay man. On the other hand, a white rose was associated with a passive gay man. Quite comical when you imagine trying to keep a straight face while your friend is rambling about roses, isn't it? But not all floriography was about roses. White carnations, for example, were a nod to Oscar Wilde, the celebrated playwright and dandy, who had a very public scandal involving homosexuality. Sporting a white carnation was akin to publicly raising a glass in Wilde's name, and when you consider how many vases Oscar Wilde might be populating in his floral afterlife, it becomes another peculiar layer of humor. Speaking of Oscar Wilde, while the societal climate was markedly chilly towards gay men in the 1950s, the literary world, however, was a warmer habitat. Holding a volume of Oscar Wilde's poetry under your arm was not just portrayed as a sign of good reading taste, it was a telltale sign among gay men. But not all members of the bookish hombre club wanted to gush about Oscar Wilde's prose. Not to worry, there was another telltale book titled The Green Carnation. This novel, a lightly disguised account of the love affair between Wilde and Lord Alfred Douglas, was another, albeit a more obscure, signal among the gay community. Nothing screams self-expression more than carelessly leaving a controversial book in plain sight. Now does it? So there it was. A waltz in the park. Ahem. Remember, Polari, I couldn't resist a good callback. A strategic carnation in the lapel, or a book casually tucked under an arm. All was subtle, coded. Signals in the layered language of 1950s gay culture. How delightfully clandestine. This secret language was not by any means a far-fetched design of desperate measures. It was a unique tapestry of culture, spun with threads of resistance. From tinkering with the tongue, Polari to romancing with roses, and to being bibliophiles of particular interest, the gay gentlemen did not just survive their world, they thrived, creating their amusing, secretive, rebellious parallel universe. As we gently put down these symbols of resistance and move on, I must allude to our next chapter. Think of it as a sneak peek into the secret world of kitchen cupboards or pantry politics. It sounds tasty, doesn't it? But remember, nothing is ever as simple as it seems in this intriguing half-hidden world. In an era where art was a weapon, where would the gay man's brushstroke fall? Do keep your eye on that can of pineapple. Who knew canned fruit could hold such a bold narrative of rebellion? But we'll spill the beans, or should I say, pineapple rings, in our next dive into boring history. Sweet dreams, lovely listeners, with the 1950s flashing by like a dizzying fairground carousel of A-line skirts, waist-high slacks, and the cool beats of rock and roll. It was easy to overlook a certain counterculture cocktail mixed amidst this era's heady gin fizz, the quiet, coded world of the homosexual gentleman. The lavender lexicon, as some wags would call it, was a secret language used by gay men during this period to identify each other, because when society's cheek was turned, the need arose for more covert ways of being open. In a world where every wink, nod, and innocuous comment carried a hidden potential for a budding romance to blossom, you had to be as sharp as a freshly starched shirt collar. The general populace jived to Elvis Presley, oblivious to the rhythmic witticisms catapulting through the clandestine gay community. A gentleman on the prowl, say, in a cocktail bar, might see an attractive candidate across the room. Just as a samurai would not draw his weapon without due reason, our prospective suitor would not risk open flirtation. So, how about a harmless question to break the ice without cracking the floorboards? Do you know Edna Street, Vincent Millay? If the dapper chap answered in acknowledgement of the renowned bisexual poet, well then, my dear listener, we might be in business. Roving hands searched for other roving hands in the happening madpad. A madpad, in our coded lingo, referred to any public place where homosexual gentlemen were most likely to congregate, from flashy discos to quiet coffee shops. And while you ponder, coiling over in your comfy sleeping blanket, yes, the Fonz may have shared his milkshake shop with less visible, yet equally flamboyant counterparts. How deliciously the words swirled, hiding the unhidden. A wink would ride covertly on a, "Does your wife understand modern art?" Or, I hear, "Bessie Smith records are selling like hotcakes." Both seemingly innocent references. Yet, to a gentleman in the know, the question would be, but the door to a world painted not in straightforward black and white, but in the vibrant hues of the rainbow. And rather comically, the crafting of these encoded messages was as precise as a particularly demanding game of charades. One wrong word, and the gentleman might find himself, quite inopportunely, discussing the finer points of modern art or Bessie Smith's discography in earnest with a baffled straight man. Meanwhile, his intended love interest, sipping his vodka martini at the other end of the bar, would likely remain oblivious. These codes were a connoisseur's secret menu, a cryptic crossword of romantic encounters just waiting to be solved. They were clever, ingenious even, nodding at pop culture and high literature, making the invisible visible. An augmented reality, if you will, minus the tech nerdiness. Add more martini. And therein lies the beauty of these secret codes. Seemingly innocuous phrases held secret interpretations. The conspiratorial whispers that once echoed in the hush-hush corners of 1950s society have now become symbolic of a powerful narrative, once silenced. A narrative of love in its most enigmatic form. But as stars twinkle on the tranquil blanket of the 1950s, this narrative strives to break free from the confines of coded whispers. As Edna St. Vincent Millay herself once wrote, "Pity me that the heart is slow to learn what the swift mind beholds at every turn." Wise words, Ms. Millay. Wise words indeed. Yet, it's interesting to ponder how codes weren't the only trick in the gentleman's guide to unobtrusively crossing paths with a fellow friend lover. Brace yourselves, dear listeners, as in our next chapter, we delve into the songs that intoxicated the air with their heartfelt rhythms, carrying with them an underlying sousong of flirtation. Yes, music, it turns out, would play its own role in this clandestine dance. But for now, let the notes of the Lavender Lexicon lull you into a gentle slumber as we bid adieu to Chapter 9. While it's often believed that the 50s were a decade characterized by conservative values and strictly knit sweaters, there was a rather cheeky underbelly that existed, almost like the surprise marshmallow filling you find in your grandmother's seemingly benign cookies. And herein lay our tale, in the cordial gatherings and smoky jazz clubs where one would stumble upon the covert language spoken by gay men of the era. Allow me to set the scene for you. Imagine a lounged atmosphere, the air heavy with whispers, laughter, and a hint of Cuban tobacco. The saxophone in the background was smoothly melting the cacophony into a melodious tune, and in between the clinking of martini glasses, an interesting language was unspooling itself. It was an era when the direct expression of one's non-heteronormative sexuality was controversial and fraught with risk. To protect and identify each other, the gay community devised a captivating lingo, a verbal masquerade, if you will, known as Polari. Polari was not purely a creation of the 1950s. Indeed, it had its roots tracing back to the 19th century street slang of London. However, it experienced something of a heyday in the post-war period, where it served as the secret code of gay men and performers alike. So while one part of the language was universal, gay men in individual cities often added their own little spice, creating local dialects that embellished this intriguing language further. One might question why they needed such an intricate covert language. Well, think of it this way. If you're planning a trip to Narnia but can't mention Narnia, wouldn't you want a way to ask others if they've found the ultimate, mystical wardrobe pathway without actually saying the word wardrobe or Narnia? It's like trying to talk about Harry Potter without saying the name. You'd eventually resort to spectacle boy, wizard in training. Historians would chuckle over this, the human knack for creating codes. Some say it's a declaration of rebellion. Others suggest it's a layer of self-preservation. Whatever the reason, in the 1950s, Polari floated through the air, filling up the corners of taut secrecy and loosening society's necktie just a little. If you wandered into a speakeasy, subtle exchanges might leave you befuddled. "Vada well at that, bona omi," an affable gentleman might say, admiring an attractive man. "Let's dish the dirt," another would suggest, itching for a good gossip. And just so you're not all clammy with anticipation, vada meant see, bona signified good, and omi was man. Check out that handsome fellow, basically. Dish the dirt. Well, my dear sleep-seeking intellectual, you can guess. Now remember, Polari was not a completely new language, but rather a sprinkle of words mixed into everyday dialogue, much like a linguistic salt bay, which made it both versatile and a tad elusive. It was a wordplay playground, an intriguing concoction of rhyming slang, backslang, thieves' cant, fractured Italian, Yiddish, and occasional Spanish. By the late 1950s, Polari had become the linguistic mascara of the gay community, shrouding their identities while highlighting their existence. But as public acceptance began to dawn and the shadows of stern societal norms grew faint, the need for this coded language began to recede. The whimsical dictionary of Polara started collecting linguistic dust, fading into the sepia-tinted pages of history. Yet the spirit of its existence, the essence of that hushed defiance and community bond, still echo around, like the faint melody of those smoky jazz clubs we initially pictured. Speaking of which, it's time we figuratively step out from the dimly lit wooden interiors and onto the bustling city streets of the same era. For as furtive as Polari was, there was another communication tactic that was decidedly more visible and physical. Gentlemen, do adjust your neckties, and ladies, fluff up your petticoats. as we prepare to embark on the humorous and ever so slightly cheeky journey of the colourful hanky coat in our next chapter inside the lavishly curtained world of before Pride parades. In the pre-dawn of the 1950s, amidst the stifling cultural fabric of conformity, gay men fashioned a language out of smoke signals. Well, not literally smoke signals, but the concept isn't far off. If telegraph was the internet of the 1800s, then polyary, discussed at length in your dreams last night, was, to gay men, the texting language of the 1950s. Let's slowly delve into that delicate labyrinth of coded communication. Polyary, tied slow dance style with cant, a secretive language used by British criminals and circus folks back in the 19th century, morphed itself into a frothy cocktail of cryptic conversation that was used primarily by gay men in the mid-1900s. Sentences sprinkled with colourful, seemingly nonsensical words like vada, omi, and ria were flippantly sewn into normal conversation. The only people to reap the actual meaning were those that knew how to read these coded bulbs planted in the fertile fields of seemingly ordinary chatter. Clever indeed. To eavesdropping ears, two gay men would appear to be trading innocent banter or jovially debating the merits of Aunt Mabel's rhubarb pie. All the while, they were, in reality, sharing their life stories, desires, or perhaps even setting up a rendezvous right under the unsuspecting noses of society. Allow your dreamy imagination to wander into a 1950s smoke haze bar. Picture two men seated on slick bar stools, neckties snugly hugging their crisp collars, their conversation punctuated by clinking ice cubes. Vada the Bonacartes on the Omi Pallone at the counter, one remarks casually, subtly drawing his mate's attention to the good-looking gay man at the bar. His friend, nursing his whiskey, replies with an understated, "His rear is quite boner. That's Polari, for his hair looks great." Is it not fascinating how they've reconstructed an invisible castle of words within the larger kingdom of English? A cozy, unnoticed refuge. Just imagine the sweet thrill of it, the clandestine joy of having a secret language at your disposal, something that set you apart from the perfunctory normality. Quite the delicious secret indeed. Being human, however, has its downsides. We are creatures of habit, aren't we? Soon the secret started to leak. The hushed whispers of Polari found an unexpected stage in the 1960s through a rather popular radio show. Round the Horn, a trending British comedy series, started featuring characters who conversed vivaciously in Polari, while the mainstream audience chuckled at what they thought were nonsensical phrases. Gay men across the nation shared a quiet, knowing smile. At about the same time, the Sexual Offences Act of 1967 decriminalised same-sex relationships in the UK, opening up a world of possibilities for the gay community. As the community began to step out of the shadows, ever so cautiously, the need for coded languages like Polari began to wane. The whispering shadows of secrecy gave way to the blooming sunlight of acceptance. Before we indulge in this newfound dawn in the next chapter, let's take a moment to quietly appreciate the strength and wisdom of those who navigated through the thick fog of prejudice with a lantern of discreet whispers. Like a hidden garden thriving amidst dense underbrush, these secret codes created their own little green patches in the otherwise barren landscape of acceptance. They served as a lifeline, a clandestine link, and a gentle whisper of solidarity during times when possibilities were rigidly tethered by the narrow ropes of societal norms. So, as we prepare to pedal gently toward a world slowly opening to change, let us hold a moment of gratitude for the hushed wisdom of the gay men in the 1950s and their cheeky codes of survival. To Polari and its precious secrecy, cheers! Now, as we continue entwining ourselves in the knit of history's often undiscussed and slightly cheeky underbelly, let's set the stage on which our resourceful 1950s gays would chance upon each other. Picture, if you will, the typical American bar of the 50s. It's a scene stippled with jazz and hardened liver spots, billowing cigar smoke shrouding men with neon street drinks and shadowy thoughts. Amid that foggy reality, codes and cues emerged, secret handshakes of the socially shunned. But these weren't any ordinary codes, oh no, these were the very keys to their hidden kingdom. And so, while your eyelids now mimic the heavy curtains of a midnight cinema reflecting on the decade past, let me let you in on something. 1950s. Gay men weren't just smart, they were quartermasters of clever creativity stashed beneath their sensible suspenders. They were maestros of the clandestine, cloaked in an audacity so subtle it quietly jingled like the brass on an unnoticed door in a crowded party. One of the earliest and most intriguing codes was Friend of Dorothy. Now you might be chuckling to yourself, imagining a clandestine group of men huddled together, furtively whispering about this enigmatic Dorothy and her expansive network of friends. But let me assure you, Dorothy was no ordinary girl, and these men were no mere admirers of her ruby slippers. This Nancy Drew-esque code originated from the movie The Wizard of Oz to silently express one's gay identity and to detect others. The name Dorothy referred to Judy Garland's character, who was a well-known gay icon. So imagine this. A man walks into the bar, slides onto a vinyl-ridden stool, orders something mighty strong, and perhaps leans over to the bartender and casually asks, "Any friends of Dorothy around?" If the bartender winks, you know you've hit the jackpot, and Dorothy's pals are in town. Along similar lines, men used hanky codes, and I do not mean the kind that involves a sneeze and a gentleman's nod. Men would place colored handkerchiefs in their back pockets, indicating their preferences in, twilight recreational activities. Left pocket signified one role, while the right another. The variety of colors, like a gay man's rainbow starter pack, each had unique meanings. Now, if you've just pictured a man rummaging through a drawer full of handkerchiefs, like picking the right socks for a party, then you, dear listener, are on the right track. And if you're chuckling softly, well, then history has indeed tickled your fancy, like a feather duster in a stuffy, forgotten library cupboard. Elegant, but ever so slightly ridiculous. At this point, it might be worth mentioning that these codes weren't just employed for romantic pursuits. They were also vital lifelines, a Morse code for the marginalized. Without these symbols, identifying like-minded supporters and potential safety in a sea of fear and condemnation would be akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Except the haystack is sentient and it's rather ticked off at needles these days. But oh, how gloriously did these silent symphonies of secret communication work. They became windows of opportunity, strung up in the oppressive walls of societal norms, whispering a promise of a world beyond, a world of slightly gauche shindigs and all the alliteration that one's heart could desire. And so, as our buoyant nap floats on the languid sea of this dreamy recollection, it's time for us to tiptoe out of the hazy bars and take a gentle stride into the dazzling sunlight. Our next stop takes us to a vibrant realm where coded rings become rainbow flags, where a friend of Dorothy's becomes a friend to all. But to truly appreciate that journey, we must first find the beginning. So, nestle in, dear listeners, and perforate the velvety veil of dreams as we gradually move towards the origins of the icon that is synonymous with pride today, the rainbow flag. For there is no rainbow without a little rain, and sometimes that rain whispers historical secrets in the softest of patters against the glass windows of time. Now, aren't you ready for the pitter-patter of tiny rainbow-colored feet? Oh yes, it's story time. While we've already dipped into the clandestine world of the 1950s gay man, let's dive a bit deeper into their secret language, shall we? Slip into your coziest bed socks and prepare for some linguistic levity. And fear not, I promise no pop quizzes or jargon-heavy monologues, just a duvet of delightful chatter to lull you to sleep. The 1950s gay community developed a surprisingly robust secret language, hilariously taking embarrassment to a whole new level by padding pockets with colorful handkerchiefs, each color signifying a different interest or preference. This phenomenon was known as the hanky code. Blue for, well, let's keep it G-rated. But it pertained to a certain popular hobby involving dinner and perhaps a movie beforehand. Red signified an interest in weightlifting, or the wearer's fondness for garlic bread, depending on who you asked and where you were located. And just to add an extra layer of complexity, the side of the body a hanky was worn could mean the difference between an enjoyable evening and a swift, sharp slap on the wrist. The gay community took the vague, generic term, Friend of Dorothy, based on Judy Garland's iconic role in The Wizard of Oz, and spun a covert lexicon around it, full of double entendres and grinning in-jokes. This code wasn't just confined within English-speaking countries either. In France, an affectionate pet name for your sweetheart, Ma-mi, was humorously reappropriated to refer to gay men, and in Spain, they used entendido, which translates to understood in English, cheekily embodying their own insider knowledge. Perhaps one of the most amusing chapters in the parody playbook was the game of Are You a Tortilla? A slightly watered-down, safer alternative to the more blatant Are You gay? This playful phrase was all about establishing camaraderie without giving away too much. So just imagine in the bustling diners and smoke-filled jazz clubs of the 50s, beneath the seemingly inane chatter about the latest big band hit or the newest Buick model, coded conversations were softly simmering. There was a whole other social dance taking place, a choreography whispering of secret lives, desires, and identities. From a modern perspective, this linguistic gymnastics might seem overly complex, like the world's most delicate relay race. One slight misjudgment, and the baton goes flying. But in a world where authenticity and openness could be dangerous, these secret codes, amusing as they may be, were a lifeline to the gay community. In a time when the LGBT community was considered more subversive than a Russian spy blaring propaganda from a hidden radio transmitter, these communications, however cryptic, were the love notes, testament to their bravery and determination to simply exist and connect in a world unwelcoming of them. There was, however, an unexpected advantage for our unconventional linguists. Their multi-layered, uber-cryptic conversations gave them the ability to throw a divine shade like no other, the kind of shade that wouldn't even look out of place in a telenovela. So as we snugly wrap up this journey into coded communication of the 1950s gay man, let's take a moment to tip our metaphorical hats to these unsung heroes of semiotics. Their intricate flirtations and witty banter formed a secret world of endearing nuances, a world that tangoed its way around prejudice and instead embraced creativity and humor. As we stroll down this technicolor memory lane of yesteryears, we're not just eavesdropping on a bygone era, but honoring the innovation and tenacity of the gay community. It's a cozy reminder that joy, connection, and a sense of community can bloom even in the most adversarial circumstances. So as we tiptoe into our next chapter, we are about to encounter the tightrope that gay men walked in the workplace. But I can promise you, it's not all pressure cooker tension and subterfuge. There's a fair sprinkling of office hijinks and covert caper just waiting to liven up the humdrum cubicle life. But for now, sleep beckons. Let's pick it up in our dreams, shall we? Hark, gentle listener, as we travel back to the glistening cityscape of the 1950s, a time when the car radios echoed endlessly with the dulcet tones of Frank Sinatra, rear seats serving as the cordial host for late-night trysts. Some were more clandestine than others, secret rendezvous brimming with electric anticipation. Isn't it delightful to imagine all these folks trying desperately to understand each other in a world that hadn't yet had the concept of Control plus F? Let's fetch our time-traveling manual typewriters for a journey in learning secret narratives hidden between warm typographic characters, a humorous reminder of the wicked lengths we, soft humans, go for connection. Yes, dear listener, in the time of glittered teepins and voluminous petticoats, the coded language was not just confined to the murky realms of spies or secret agents. It was the secret lingo used by gay men to discover companionship, love, or a quick jig in the dance of life, to uncover each other in a society that perceived them as errant shadows lurking in the margins. Stripped of Google Maps or any of the shiny, contemporary apparatus of connectivity, gay men meshed together words to build a clandestine treasure map of code. Now, close your eyes. Picture a smoky, faded diner or a bustling, aromatic coffeehouse of the distant 1950s. A couple sits by the worn-out, wooden countertop, leaning into their hushed conversation, fingers buried in the cinnamon-smelling detritus of breakfast. One squeezes a napkin, then arranges it carefully on the tabletop, shaping it like a swooping swan. A secret signal, a silent reality, wrapped in the cozy mythology of everyday objects. Softly remember, dear listener, how the stakes were mighty high. This was no mere flirtation. This was well-choreographed survival. Language was salted with suggestion, conversations dusted subtly with innuendo that could slip past the inattentive ear. "Friend of Dorothy" was one such phrase, hinting at the bright, technicolored world of The Wizard of Oz, a sentiment that resonated warmly within the gay community, painting a rainbow pathway to acceptance and belonging. Judy Garland, the beloved Dorothy, became an unintentional beacon of hope for them, her own struggles and triumphs mirroring their plight in a grayer world. Seemingly harmless queries over the weather were, in fact, high-stake examinations gauging the waters of acceptance. Gay today, in such cases, was a quiet possibility, both the confession and the question. Now, fasten your seatbelts, for we're venturing into the linguistical stratosphere. Indeed, in the cavernous depth of these coded conversations, many a tongue tip walked a fan-like range of fabulous fashion terms. An unsuspecting sporty indicated athletic or muscular men, while butch alluded to those embodying more traditionally masculine traits, a priceless peek into the textural richness of masculine identity and desire. Yet, amidst the labyrinthine dialect we've traversed, the heart beats warmest at the wellspring of courage that fed it. In an era soaked in suave sleuthing, these brave souls dared to drape their identities in such beautifully intricate tapestries of words and secret signals, in search of a shared understanding, a moment of recognition. As we take in this secret dance of subtext, let us marvel at how language evolves, how it can become a clandestine conduit of empathy, a steady bay of belonging against the harsh winds of societal rejection. With the cloak of night wrapped around the glittering cityscape, we're set to journey into the courtyard of the divine Miss Dorothy herself, where symbols morph into fireworks in a chorus of belonging. That, dear listeners, will be our next tale. Let's keep the train of sleepy history moving, shall we? Onwards to the world of symbols, where a green carnation is not just a green carnation, but a map leading to shared identities. Let our quest of uncovering secrets continue on this timeless terrain of longing and belonging. Picture this, if you will, a street authentically wrapped in the technicolor magic of the 1950s. A man strolling coolly down the sidewalk, casual yet alert. His glances are friendly, but there's an intricate dance hiding behind his oh so nonchalant demeanor. In his pocket, he holds what could be the parchment for a secret society or a modern form of hieroglyphics. A matched plain white handkerchief precariously placed in the back pocket of his trousers was no mere style statement, but rather a whisper to those in the know. Hello, gentlemen. I belong. Yes, welcome, dear sleep nudgers, to the coded world of color-coded handkerchiefs, carefully curated plants, and symbolic rings. A world devised by 1950s gay men to create a vibrant and somewhat flamboyant, secret Morse code, allowing them to carefully navigate the landscape of making connections and finding companionship while dodging the societal strictures and prejudices that painted their era in dull shades of suppressed individuality. Speaking of shade, the clandestine bay of colorful handkerchiefs, bandanas in true American slang. Now, there was no universally accepted color coding system, no gay equivalent of Pantone's color chart back then. But the consensus generally accepted a white handkerchief as signaling a certain interest in softer, more affectionate encounters. A black one, on the other hand, was about as subtle as a bombshell in an echo chamber. Still, you had to give them points for creativity, didn't you? Then you had the houseplant hierarchy. Oh, the Ivy League held nothing over the carefully cultivated language of foliature used by our house-proud gay brethren to signal their presence, when a fern was just never simply a fern. Yes, my friends, interior design in the 1950s had layers deeper than an ogre from a certain animated movie. And as we slid over the rainbow, we encountered the pinky ring rendezvous. Those who wore their rings on their pinkies were the knights who had effectively said to the invisible dragon of conformity, "Not today, Sir Smoke a lot." The pinky ring was akin to a secret handshake, a slight glint to the watchful eye that they were part of the same clandestine color brigade. These codes, while covert and complex, were also remarkably effective. You see, dear snooze seekers, in an era of high-waisted politeness and hushed conversations, communicating something as intimate and individual as sexual orientation required an almost choreographic cooperation. Symbols, signals, and the cryptic dance involved in their usage created a sense of unity, camaraderie, and acceptance that was rare in those days. All this undercover signaling, while clever and fascinating, may seem unnecessary to us in our modern world of brightly painted pride symbols. But for gay men of the 1950s, these codes, the carefully orchestrated dance steps, and the camaraderie nestled in the subtext, made the struggle for acceptance a joint effort, a shared secret that bound them together. Far from being tales of persecution, these are stories of resilience, resourcefulness, and a pioneering spirit that laid the foundation for the expression of otherness we see around us. As our brief stroll down this historic lane of secret signals winds down, take a moment to appreciate the intricate tapestry of human communication we uncovered today. It's a testament to the resourcefulness and bravery of a group that chose to express themselves even in the face of prejudice, dressing their secret signs in a kaleidoscope of colors and symbols. As the faded hues of this technicolor street blend into the soft twilight, prepare yourself for the tales that dance just over the horizon. Our next chapter unravels the rhythm of the ballrooms, the secretive clubs where a new chiaroscuro masterpiece took shape, where the coded culture of gay men found splendid articulation, the art of brotherhood in flamboyance. So, lay back, rest your eyes, and let this technicolor panorama of code and color wash over you as we glide seamlessly into the glittering world of 1950s ballroom rendezvous. The night is young and the dance floor beckons, dear sleep seekers, in our ongoing drowsy delve into before pride parades. Imagine you're strolling along a moon-dusted street in San Francisco in the 1950s, your footsteps echoing as you venture towards the glittering lights of a clandestine bar nestled discreetly into the urban landscape. The sidewalk is a tapestry of shadow and neon, the night air fragrant with tobacco and discreet secrecy, and there's a thread of music just audible, a subtle melody from hidden quarters. As you approach the entrance, a man standing outside glances at the red carnation pinned to your lapel, a vibrant punctuation in your muted attire, and an all-important symbol of identity. You see his eyes flick down briefly, before they meet yours again, with a barely perceptible nod. This small interaction, almost invisible to the oblivious passerby, is actually part of a detailed non-verbal language that thrived among gay men of the time, a lifeline woven from symbols, codes, and of course, a dash of wit. Let's take a moment to appreciate the undercover linguists of the gay community during mid-20th century America, camouflaging their identities with an ingenious secret language known as Polari. Popular among certain circles of gay men, artists, and entertainers, Polari was a whimsical jumble of Italian, Romany, cant, and slang with roughly the same structure as a hastily built IKEA cupboard. It didn't always make sense, but it had a certain charm. Among many expressions borrowed from Polari, Polone for woman, Omi for man, and Vada for look or see were woven into casual conversations to signpost membership of the community. There's something refreshingly audacious about intertwining an invisible community language into everyday conversation, isn't it? It's like smuggling jokes past your stern maths teacher or sneaking in an extra dessert under the watchful gaze of your diet-obsessed roommate. Let's put on our own red carnations then and step into this secret world of the 1950s. We'll adopt the coded language, gesture to the doorman, and descend into the dimly lit haze of the tavern. Over at the bar, a man gives his date a green carnation, a practice popularized by Oscar Wilde and now serving as a throbbing beacon of mutual interest. If the acceptor chose to wear it on the right side, the message was clear. Not tonight, Dapper Dan. But if he pinned it on the left, then huzzah. Interest was returned. Now take a detour to another corner table, which looks innocuous at first. You'd see men there swapping postcards, the Physique Pictorial, a bodybuilding magazine that served as a coy-queer lifestyle magazine. Its most famous cover star, Joe D'Alessandro, was not just another handsome hunk. He was the Michelangelo's David of the Postal Service, heralding a message of inclusivity to mailboxes across the country, all in fantastic, physical condition, of course. If between all these coded carnations, winks, gestures, and postcards, you're starting to have trouble decoding the intricacies of gay life in the 1950s, well, that's kind of the point. Living under constant societal repression, gay men during this era turned their world into a cryptic puzzle filled with symbols, subtexts, and cues, navigating an ocean of conformity in boats of individuality. The dance performed by gay men in the 1950s was delicate, dangerous, and in itself, deeply symbolic of the struggle for self-expression in the face of persecutory societal norms. But as we lull you to slumber with tales of the past, rest knowing that the puzzle pieces spawned conversation, solidarity, and networks of support which invariably led to the vibrant pride parades of the future. So next time you find yourself aimlessly wandering through the labyrinthine aisles of language and gesture, picture the quieter, shadowed corners of the past with their coded carnations, physique pictorials, and Vada the Dolly dish. Thank them for paving the way for the rainbow flags that fill our streets today. Reach out to your nearest dictionary or ponder over those IKEA instructions. We'll soon be delving into more makeshift signposts and subtle indicators. We'll meet again in curious corners where semaphore meets poetry and coded history whispers into the night. Rest easy, dear listener. Until then, let the hushed echoes of the past lull you into peaceful dreams. For tomorrow, we resume our decrypted journey of before pride parades, the silent signals and cheeky codes. As we continue with our tour through the secretive landscape of 1950s gay culture, let's stroll over to the land of literature. Now, you might be thinking, surely books can't be all that exciting or subversive. They're usually the things people read with a hot cup of tea before they drift off into their dreams. But this was the 1950s. It was a different time when even the seemingly innocuous pages of a book posed opportunities for subtly coded messages and hidden meanings. Our story for tonight begins at a hushed but vibrant bookstore, its slightly musty aura of wisdom and lore contributing to its scholarly mystique. Imagine a rainbow hidden in a library, each color coding for a particular genre, only if the genre were gay men. It's not exactly a section at your local Barnes & Noble, is it? Books, during this time, served as a peculiar but surprisingly effective method for gay men to identify and connect with each other in public. See, there were certain books laden with homosexual undertones and coded messages. That's right, some books were practically screaming rainbow, only if you knew where to look. Let's take The Catcher in the Rye, for instance. Now don't get excited. I am in no way saying Holden Caulfield was a coded message for being gay, but gesturing toward it could imply certain things. Someone picking up this book, flipping through it in an exaggerated manner, or carrying it conspicuously under his arm, wasn't just about my love for post-war alienation. It was a symbol, an arrow, pointing toward their sexual orientation. Or how about the openly written City of Night by John Ricci, being read in full, view by desirable bachelors? This now iconic book served as an informal signaling beacon for men in the know, much like a literary bat signal hovering over Gotham City, calling out to its intended party. It was the shady Craigslist of its day, and it did lend an intellectual sheen to the dealings, didn't it? There's also the celebrated gay novel Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. If a gentleman was seen engrossed in its pages at a park, at a cafe, or while riding the subway, he'd effectively raised his rainbow flag, sans the parade and the colourful Mardi Gras mask. For those who enjoyed the theatrical world, Tennessee Williams and his tormented characters served as a blueprint, a hidden map to their potential allies in love. Think of these books as the printed form of the trendy Polari lexicon, conveying their secrets through deceptively plain sight. Oh, and let me not forget that bookshelves themselves played a pivotal role. A copy of Oscar Wilde on your shelf made a subtle, yet significant statement about your sexuality. And really, isn't Wilde the one we all turn to when we need a quick lesson in wit, gay, straight, or anywhere in between? A small caveat though, these were not foolproof tactics. Much like our modern internet's misspelled search inquiries, decoding these signals often led to humorous misunderstandings and awkward situations, like accidentally hitting on a high school English teacher or a curmudgeonly old librarian. Yet, despite the inaccurate calculations and occasional blunders, the invaluable service these paper-bound signals provided to the gay men of this era was worth the awkward price of admission. They carved paths of connection in a society that refused them means to communicate, allowing individuals a sense of belonging, validation, and community. So, the next time you see someone reading James Baldwin while nursing their latte at Starbucks, maybe give them a knowing look. Now, wouldn't that be a fun piece of modern, historical reenactment? But of course, there was more to these secret codes than just literature. Yes, you guessed it. The shadows of secrecy extended their reach even into the glittery, melodramatic world of theatre and performance arts. So tighten your seatbelts and get ready for an amusing dive into the golden era of Hollywood, where the silver screen wasn't so silver after all. Get your popcorn ready, folks, because like any Shakespearean play, things are going to get dramatic in the next chapter, if you know what I mean. Once upon a legendarily mundane Monday, in the middle of nowhere, an extraordinary language began to blossom out of the subfusc. Draped in the plainest brown cardigan you could possibly conjure up, the colour of a self-righteous sparrow, and armed with a humble pair of horn-rimmed spectacles, our hormone-embattled hero came to be regarded as the Sherlock Holmes of gay vocabulary, or as he preferred to call his craft, the scholarly study of the vogue of vague. His name was Vernacular Werner, but lo and behold, my dear weary listeners stubbornly refuse to picture him as dully as his name sounds. You see, Werner was judged, not by the dreary palette of his wardrobe, nor the scholarly humdrum of his legal name, but by the vibrant rainbow of words, shrouded in secrecy, that he wielded with such eloquence and mirth. The 1950s were a bodily oppressive epoch for gay men, in a way that would make even an iron corset seem freeing. Homosexuality was classified as a mental illness, and laws criminalizing same-sex intimacy were as prevalent as spinach stuck in grinning teeth at a family reunion. Uncomfortable, awkward, and yet universally present. Enters our letter-loving knight, Werner, with his vow to grant his brothers solace through a code language, in this case, the Polari. But how, oh weary listener, could this happen? Well, it turns out the answer lay in the most unexpected of places. Sailor jargon and lingua franca, a mixed language of sorts, that helped sailors from different nations communicate on trade expeditions. A peculiar choice indeed, or so you may think, till you dwell upon the stirring restlessness shared between hardened sailors on distant seas and the oppressed souls hidden beneath the suburban facade. Polari, with its jaunty sailor origins, was a melange of syntax spun from the fabric of Italian, Cockney slang, Yiddish, and even a dash of Romani dialect. Say, for instance, you wanted to compliment a handsome man during these treacherous times, you would slyly quip, "Oh, look at the bona omi polones," the English translation being, "Such a good-looking homosexual man." Because how dare one give compliments in plain language when one could wrap it in a riddle? Polari provided a clandestine playground for the gay men of the 1950s, where self-expression wasn't just unimpeded, but jeeringly adorned with the feathers of humor and wit. For Werner, each sentence was a rebellion strung together in whispers and muffled laughs, a glorious, private revolution of the tongue. Under our linguistic luminaries' nourishment, this enigmatic language flourished, giving voice to an entire generation that yearned to speak and be heard, be seen and loved, yet dared not for fear of the draconian laws and broad societal misjudgment. With their secret vernacular, the oppressed found solace, community, and, rather satirically, a bravado that thrived beneath the traditional veneer. Perhaps the genius of humor is that it lets you defy the very powers that seek to subjugate you, to laugh in the face of danger, pantomime dignity, without imposing confrontations. And Polari was certainly that wild smirk in the face of the nondescript heteronormative narrative, a witty rebellion waiting to burst at the seams of societal fabric. Now, as we prepare to drift to the final verse of this clandestine code of communication, let's take a moment to ponder. Languages, they say, are the mirrors of civilizations. They reflect our past, dictate our present, and shape our future, in words whispered or roared. What happens then, when those very words are stifled? When lips hesitate to voice their truth? Well, that will be our yarn for another night. Let your sleep-laden eyes succumb to the allure of nighttime as we prepare to unveil the fate of our hero, vernacular Werner, in a world cloaked in whispered rebellion and dreams of a free tomorrow. As the moon takes her place in the velvety night skies, we'll trace the spectral thread of clandestine language paving the way for an operational language of liberation, more open, more accepted, more proud. Until then, dear listener, may your dreams be painted in every hue of the rainbow. And now we weave our way into the fashion-forward 50s. Ah yes, the era of poodle skirts, milkshakes, rock and roll, and as it turns out, an innovative code language. You see, dear listener, during the temperate afternoons and heady nights of this decade, gay men were mastering the art of the not-so-casual encounter in a world governed by the fickle rules of social decorum. Remember, at this time in history, a certain degree of caution was essential to be open about one's orientation. A wink, a nod, a surreptitious repartee cloaked in double entendre. Still, life always manages to drizzle a bit of humor onto such constrained circumstances, because humor, like love, cannot be contained. Which brings us to handkerchiefs. Yes, you heard that right. The accessory, chiefly known for being publicly sneezed into, became an emblem of sorts in this covert gay lexicon of the 1950s. As unlikely as it may sound, the humble hanky was fashioned into a beacon, an emblem even, to communicate romantic preferences and more. They were displayed prominently by individuals seeking a connection. Depending on which pocket it nestled in, the color of the fabric, or the manner in which it was folded, each handkerchief broadcasted a peculiar sort of Morse code communicating the wearer's inclinations in a gloriously understated fashion. A lavender hanky, for example, meant the person was seeking someone of the same sex. A hanky in the right pocket indicated the wearer was of a more passive disposition, looking for a partner to take the lead. One in the left pocket reverse signaled the exact opposite. And while these codes may sound like the awkward teenage years of the gay community, it was an ingenious way to adapt to a society not yet ready to accept and understand. Picture it now. A clandestine ballet of sorts, a series of silent exchanges in bustling city centers or tranquil parks. Subtle nods to hankies, eyes meeting across a crowded room, a culture evolving under the very noses of those none the wiser. One can't help but feel a sort of nostalgic amusement at this, a flair of retro espionage mixed with comic misdirection. For while Mr. Straight-laced businessman assumed he was striding into an ordinary American cafe, he was, instead, stepping onto a coded stage, all unwitting. Then there was the matter of what color you were sporting. A red hanky, for instance, was not just a festive fashion statement. Rather, it was a flag flown by those drawn to certain risque and adventurous practices. Fret not, dear listener. Our story does not wade any deeper into this colorfully risque terrain. The specifics are best left for perhaps a different, somewhat less sleepy program. Now, hold on to your feathery sleep hats as the plot thickens. Not content with this symbolic semaphore, the stylish men of the 50s ramped things up. Rings, keys, and even earrings began to tell tales. Remember, when every second counted and communication needed to keep pace with wary eyes and societal fear, brevity was the language of survival, and a well-placed ring or key could speak volumes. In the eyelids, drooping, almost dozing reality we're drifting through together. Isn't this code fascinating? A vivid testament to the resourcefulness, resilience, and indeed, the charm of a courageous community navigating the challenging waters of their time. As we gently shuffle off into our 20th chapter, we will journey into an era of rebellion and revolution, where cryptic handkerchiefs gave way to visible prides. So, dear sleep seekers, dream on, secure in your blankets and the knowledge that you now speak fluent 50s gay code, whether you favor lavender hankies or not. Now, let's gently tiptoe, hand in hand with history, to the boisterous, challenging, and transformative 1960s. Imagine, if you will, stepping into a typical day in the 1950s, a time when rock and roll reigned supreme, poodle skirts were the height of fashion, and a man wanting to signal that he was family, code for being gay, might very well rely on a carefully tied necktie or a decadently overfilled martini. It's deeply ironic that in an era identified by dense secrets and hushed whispers, the gay male community found solace, camaraderie, and enduring connections through a series of resumed codes, now somewhat lost to time. Now, if you're thinking this all sounds very James Bond, then keep that thought. Only instead of international espionage, these codes served as passports into a secret society of shared lifestyle and love. Imagine a world where the way you wore your hat or the color of your tie could speak volumes about your interest in a companion for the evening. Talk about a secret language in plain sight. One of the more popular codes during this time was the so-called handkerchief code, or the hanky code. This system of color-coded bandanas was predominantly used by gay men in San Francisco. Think of them as a rainbow of flaunty semaphore. Each color had a particular meaning. For instance, a red hanky signified a certain sexual act, while a black one pointed to another. They were traditionally worn on the left or right side of the waist or back pockets. The left side indicated one preferred to play a more dominant or aggressive sexual role, while the right signaled a preference for a more submissive or passive sexual role. It seems the left-right divide isn't just for politics. However, navigating the world using these codes also involved risks. A wrong color or a misplaced handkerchief, and you could be woefully misunderstood or even run afoul of the law. Remember, homosexuality was still illegal in most places, and a bad read could mean a trip downtown, and not the fun, bar-hopping kind of downtown. Smaller signals also came in the form of the everyday objects that men utilized as identifying marks. A seemingly innocuous earring in the right ear, a popular phrase of the day for this was "right tight, out of sight," carried the powerful message of gay identity and the search for companionship. Bars became sanctuaries for these men. A particular favorite location of the times was the Black Cat Bar in San Francisco, an underground haven for those who needed to hide in plain sight during the day, but could kick up their heels in the safety of the evening. Bartenders themselves had unspoken communication methods with their patrons, from over-mixing drinks to the strategic placement of beer mats. These codes, while almost quaint by today's standards, served as the glue that held together a community living in the shadows. They spoke volumes for those in the know, providing connection, camaraderie, and solace. The reality of their necessity highlights the progress we've 100-fold made towards acceptance and equality. Now, if you're observing your modern tie collection with a newfound sense of historical reverence, I don't blame you. Just make sure you remember it's all in the knot, dear listener. And on that note, it's time for us to tie up this chapter and loosen our collars. In the next chapter, let's explore the courage that was needed to be openly gay when the world around you insisted otherwise. Let's remember the bravery of men like Harvey Milk and countless others who stood up for their rights when it could literally cost them everything. Forget Bond's shaken, not stirred martini. That's real courage, delivered neat. Dear listener, so we sail on in the calm, moonlit sea of our historical journey to the enticing shores of the 1950s and the secret language of gay men in a time before pride parades. The air is thick with a mix of swing music, lustrous hairspray, rock and roll, and the constant cloud of pseudonyms and secret signs. Ready? Grab a soda pop and a bag of popcorn. We're heading to the movies, or rather, a screening of one of the most intriguing episodes of Hidden Love in history. Let's start with hankies. Dear friends, we are not initiating a sneezing session here. This is something significantly more entertaining. Hankies, or handkerchiefs, were not just for wiping one's brow or blowing one's nose in those days. Nope, they were used as a code tucked conspicuously into one's back pocket. Now, how on earth, you might wonder, could a simple square of cloth serve as a means of communication? Well, imagine this. You're sauntering down the street, a neat, color-coded hanky bobbing in rhythm with your stride from your back pocket. What color, where and how it was placed, all came into play to decode the signal. It was akin to a sly whisper amongst a cacophony of loud conversations. Talking of whispers, let's sail to our next stop, the Polari language. Language, they say, can open worlds or conceal them. Polari did both, originating from circus folks, sailors, criminals, and other clandestine groups. Polari served as a secret code for many gay men in the 1950s. You'd stroll to the bar, exchange a hearty "Bona noche," good night in Polari, with the bartender, perhaps order a sherbet, a drink, and drop a few more Polari words. No neon signs needed. If the barman and the patrons knew Polari, they'd recognize you were part of something. You were one of them. So you remember your mother nagging you about the importance of good posture. Well, in the mid-20th century, adjusting your wrist could be a sign. A limp wrist, a wrist held in a relaxed or effeminate manner, was another non-verbal cue utilized by gay men of this era. Using such a subtle body language move allowed men to signal their orientation without alerting the uninitiated. Recall the bold gaze of James Dean. The iconic Hollywood rebel knew a thing or two about the power of a suggestive stare. Cruising, as it was termed, involved catching another man's eye and holding that glance just a moment longer, just enough to weave a hint of intrigue. Let your eyes do the talking, as they say. There were those who used a green carnation, symbolizing Greek love in the Victorian era, pinned to their lapel as a nod to Oscar Wilde, lamenting in their heart of hearts, "Oh, why can't Wednesday be Sunday?" You see, Sunday was the only day when the US's anti-cross-dressing law was not in effect, allowing men to dress as women. Just imagine the exuberance of those Sundays, like the most fabulous, secret Sundays. It is among these codes, dear listener, that we find the poignant seeds of struggle, acceptance, love and pride, all expressed within the cryptic parameters society had foisted upon these men. But just imagine, think of the thrill of decoding these signals, the sense of belonging it fostered amongst those who understood. But times, they were a-changing, and so too would these codes evolve, take new forms and even publicly flourish. But all that is a tale for another chapter, so keep those eyelids at half-mast and set sail into dreams filled with rainbow-colored hankies, mimetic wrists, and eyes that speak louder than words. In the next chapter, we'll delve into the daring, dramatic, and downright sparkly world of drag queens. Shh! Remember, it's our cozy secret, sweet dreams, history, pioneers, as 1950s American gay culture was being stirred like a delicate, particularly rebellious pot of alphabet soup. Gay men were constantly adjusting their blinky little sprinkles of coded language to throw the established order off the scent. In these letters of love scrawled on public places, the iconic message was, "For a good time, cool." Such creativity and subtlety, right? Let's rewind. Not only were these messages a beacon for companionship or a bit of light-hearted mischief, they were razor-edged in their defiance, gleefully thumbing noses at societal expectations and stealthily resisting conformity. Speaking of conformity, let's glide over to academia. The 1950s university was, by and large, as rigidly straight as the freshly clipped edges of an Oxford comma. Gay men in these hallowed halls of learning had to be particularly inventive. But as it's often been noted, necessity is the mother of invention, and these intellectual rebels were some of the most affectionate children she had borne. In this sort of grey and buttoned-up atmosphere, legends tell of how some gay academics would slyly drop references to Plato's Symposium into conversation. For the uninformed among us, Plato's Symposium is a classical text discussing various forms of love, including that between men, a fact not universally known in the 1950s. It was a gloriously coded nod to shared understanding, a velvet glove punch to heteronormative assumptions, and a subtle invitation to like-minded individuals to dance a rambunctious mambo on the teetering edge of societal norms. Then there were the shared cultural references, a sort of secret knock for the spectral doorway to companionship. References to Judy Garland, the iconic actress and singer, were not just nods to shared culture, they were a covert litmus test. A person's knowledge of her work, beyond the rainbow dreamscape of Oz, could indicate shared experiences and desires, painting their world in a richer, more vibrant hue, much like the rainbow flag that would symbolistically soar in the decades to come. Even fashion had its code. Gay men in the 1950s would occasionally utilize a symbol as dashing as it was discreet, the red necktie, to signal their orientation. Neckties, you see, were a structural necessity in a buttoned-up society where closets were crammed with metaphors and a colorful flair was only accepted on the stage, not on the street. Mentions of red ties slipped into ordinary conversation showed that you had mastered the art of speaking without uttering a word. It was quite literally hiding in plain sight. You might be thinking, isn't a red necktie just a red necktie? Well, my dear sleep-drifting listener, in the vanilla-flavored societal soup of 1950s America, it was so much more. It was a tiny piece of rebellion, a silent riot, a way of saying, I am here, in a world that expected, or rather, demanded you to be anything but. As amusing as all this clandestine communication might seem, it's also heartening if you think about it. It speaks of survival, resilience, and the innate human capacity to connect, even when connections are being systematically severed. However, in these secret codes, you can also catch a whiff of excitement and adventure. Every message sent, every symposium dropped, every garland gathered, and every red necktie worn was a silent but spectacular explosion of resistance, a gentle reminder that the human spirit always finds a way. But my reminiscing is taking us away from the timeline, isn't it? Buoyed on by our clandestine journey through codes and ties, next we move into the activist phase. Soon, these creative codes would morph and grow, gradually transforming into bolder proclamations of identity, community, and, yes, pride. Buckle up, hotshot, because in the next chapter, you will be escorting the suppressed whispers of the minority into the dawn of a loud, proud, and absolutely fabulous revolution. Sleep now, but remember to dream in color, for tomorrow we march with pride. As our bedtime journey winds down, let's button our coats and clasp our hats tight, for we will brave the icy winds of mid-century America once again. But this time, We're not just strolling down any city avenue. Instead, we find ourselves peering discreetly into the grim shades of the 1950s, a time when the word gay was a guarded whisper instead of an open declaration. Now imagine, you're a man of the time who mostly enjoys the company of, well, other men. Cue the raised eyebrows and gasps in the conservative background. But worry not, for tact and code come to the rescue. And these aren't James Bond-style secret codes, but quiet, gentlemanly gestures peppered throughout your daily life, like a remarkable Morse code of the heart. One popular phrase was, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" This wasn't a strange obsession with the Wizard of Oz, although that certainly would have been more colorful. Instead, Dorothy was thought to be an homage to Dorothy Parker, a witty and eloquent patron of Manhattan's artistic elite, known for her scathing satire and insouciant flair. Some say she was a symbol of the strong, confident women that many gay men of the era admired, akin to using a celebrity crush as a secret handshake. Ingenious, isn't it? But not all codes were so Dorothy-dotted. Some were more practical, relying on simple accessories. Wearing a red tie, for example, signaled your alliance and preference. It's ironic, isn't it? How a symbol of corporate shackles was also a key to unlocking forbidden doors. And then there were colored pocket squares, arranged in particular corners of one's back pocket. The colors and positioning were coded notifications. Saucy and oh-so pocket square chic. As quietly amusing these codes may sound, they were forged out of the dire need for safety and secrecy. The price of a wrong guess, a misunderstood signal, could lead to arrests, public humiliation, or worse. Yet, beneath the somber shadows, a clandestine dance spun on. In its own hushed way, it spoke of solidarity, camaraderie, and hope. Even amidst the frosty climate, existed tales of serendipitous encounters leading to lifelong love stories as beautiful as any pride parade. A personal favorite is the story of Gavin and Patrick. Gavin, a shy bookworm, had mastered the codes. He understood the significance of the colored pocket squares and the red ties, but it was a simple copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass that beckoned true love towards him. One day, at a public library, he found a note hidden within his favorite book, an understated invite. It was from Patrick, a fellow admirer of Whitman's and, as it so happened, of shy bookworms. Gavin and Patrick spent lifetimes together. Their tale whispers of moonlight strolls, secret laughter, shared books, and an eternally understood code of love that exists beyond restraints of time. It's a cozy oval portrait that hangs in the gallery of silent heroes who have painted the world more courageous and breezier, one coded whisper and love story at a time. Such tales make us appreciate the advancements reclaimed by the LGBTQ+ community today and remind us of a sobering truth, that freedom, love, and acceptance are treasures worth fighting for. So let these stories from the past gently settle into your dreams tonight. Drift into slumberland with the whisperings of beatnik poets, the quiet rustle of colored pocket squares, and the echoes of secret codes masterfully crafted amidst adversity. And as the last chapter beckons, we'll tiptoe into the halls of the Stonewall Inn, the heart and hearth of change, where history burst forth in an explosion of rainbow colors, forever altering the world as we knew it. But shh, that's a story for another night. Well, actually, tomorrow, as we meander along the thread of history, we arrive at the end of our slumberous journey, a humble tea room nestled in the heart of San Francisco in the late 1950s. It's as scenic as an elegantly chirping canary in an Art Nouveau cage glowing softly in the rosy haze of twilight. The laughter and chatter inside warmly invite tired souls to partake in camaraderie and cake in equal measures. The tea room is obscure, modest, a haunt frequented by our charming mustachioed heroes from yesteryears. Here, in the gentle clatter of porcelain teacups and the sweet smell of scones, they found sanctuary. Picture a man, let's call him Henry for want of a better pseudonym, tall, with dapperly waxed hair and a rather fetching waistcoat. Henry was more than just a regular. He was part of the furniture, a chintzy welcome doormat, if you will. Our dear Henry, despite his broad-chested bravado and his brawny stature, radiated the warmth of those high tea-scorns we mentioned earlier. And there was George, a somewhat bashful, bespectacled individual who found immense comfort in the company of a good book. In furrow-browed concentration, George was myopic, you see. He'd gently sip at his tea and occasionally nod at the wisdom of the pages, creating a ballet of idiosyncrasy to rival Tchaikovsky. But their dance couldn't whistle loudly outdoors. Instead, it hummed beneath the surface, a soft melody of shared smiles and knowing nods in places designed to look ordinary, in rituals designed to seem casual. Green ties on Wednesdays, an extra starched handkerchief presented with fanfare, a shared penchant for planting tulips, which nowhere implied a sudden love for botany, acted as serenades in a language only they understood. Here, in pastel teapot utopia, with its glittering chandeliers and parlor palm aesthetics, they were just Henry and George, two men laughing over a rib-tickling tale, all while enjoy a good, strong cup of Earl Grey tea. The walls of these rooms became their shield, a balm to the petulant ecosystem outside, a testament to Coco Chanel's famous adage, in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. Therein lay the beauty and the secret of the 1950s, when men like Henry and George co-wrote their lives with invisible ink. In an era where your preference for oolong could make you an outsider, our valiant gay compatriots were busy making sense of the brewing storm outside, all the while sipping their teas, their faces wreathed in smoke and smiles. And of course, this story wasn't confined to just San Francisco's satin-laced tea rooms. Across the road, down the alley, up the planter box-lined staircase, in the secret corners of cities across America, similar narratives of camaraderie and shared code words blossomed. The shared secret of a friend of Dorothy, or a heated debate over the beauty of Muscle Marys, all whispered in these clandestine corners, carved labyrinths of silent affirmation and affection. A green carnation nestled in the lapel, the art of tea drinking beneath rose-gold chandeliers, or an "Are you family?" asked casually. Now back here in the present day, the valiant secret keepers of the past have paved the path for the vibrant pride parades, where thousands come together to celebrate love and identity, an ever-echoing history lesson in survival, courage, and of course, impeccable fashion sense. As we bid adieu to Henry, George, and their warm, inviting tea room, our eyes closing, we remember softly, these heroes were more than just men who drank tea. They were the colorful architects of a rich tapestry of history, introducing the world to a beautiful ballet of subtlety and courage. Heroes, drinking tea, creating codes, and planting seeds of love in a world that struggled to comprehend them. Remember this tonight, as you're slipstreaming into sleep. The world might give us all a bit of a bumpy ride sometimes, but we, all of us, the Henrys and George and everyone else, are the ones who keep spinning the globe, who keep writing the stories. Good night, fellow historians. Dream away. And remember, always add a dollop of humor to your tea. After all, it worked wonders for our cozy, tea-sipping heroes of the 1950s. Sweet dreams, and pour you a cup of sweet slumber. Who knows which colorful corner of history we might find ourselves in next?